So this brings us to the new Blue Rodeo album. This was released in 2021, but it was right at the end, right? It wasn't in December 2021, so it's only a few
Yeah,
months
that's
ago.
right. It came out, yeah, I think December or November or something. Yeah.
Okay, so it had two singles so far, When You Were Wild and I Owe It to Myself. They showcase both of the singers in Blue Rodeo, which is pretty cool.
Hmm.
And to me, a new Blue Rodeo album is like it's like a warm hug. It's like a sign that everything is well in the world. What
Yeah.
what what were the challenges of recording? This is a pandemic album. What challenges arose from this damn pandemic lockdown?
Well, recording every Blue Rodeo record, with some exceptions, like 5 Days was actually, I would say, like a surprisingly easy record to record. And since then, almost every rodeo record has had its challenges. Mostly just band egos, battling it out. We went through a period. I think it was after 5 Days. We did the next album was Nowhere to Hear, and Nowhere to Hear. There was that was when Greg realized he became diabetic, and I don't know if this coincides with his diabetes, but he started writing a lot of sort of very slow, longer songs, and there was some debate as to whether these songs were suitable for Blue Rodeo, and it caused some headbutting at the time. And I think there was a little bit of a sort of a power play going on in the band then. And Greg's solution was then to record his first solo album, which was called Gone, which was almost entirely comprised of very slow songs. And then that prompted Jim to record his first solo record, which was kind of much poppier and actually went on to do really well, and then kind of kickstarted Jim's solo career, which has sort of thrived since that time. So throughout and then when everybody started doing solo, so I did the Swallows. Even Basil put out a solo record called Matinee, and Basil started working on more projects. So everybody started doing all these other projects, and then everybody started seeing themselves as a producer. So every Blue Rodeo record was like all these guys going, no, I think we should do it this way, and like, so there's been a lot of headbutting over the years, to the extent that after the last Blue Rodeo record before this one, which was 1,000 Arms, and which was also when that last tour happened, where Greg was like, okay, I can't do this anymore, I'm too burnt out, this is too much for me, and the recording of that record was frustrating for him. I don't think he felt creatively satisfied at the end of that recording, and he felt like there was sort of too much headbutting and too much compromise on his part. So that was like, between that record and this one, and the recording this one, was a 5-year chunk of time. That was the longest we've ever gone between recording albums. And I was kind of like, are we even going to make another record? Are we ever going to go on tour again? There was a big question mark over the band during those 5 years. And then COVID happened. But during COVID, Greg recorded his solo record and kind of found his mojo again as a songwriter. And part of that was because he was working with all these people from Peterborough, like Jim Boskill, this other great guitar player who plays with Jim a lot, named Kyler Tapscott, who plays in Jim's band called Jim Boskill and the Hometown Buttes. He was playing with Melissa Payne, who's a singer-songwriter from Peterborough, and James McKenty, who is he was a former member of the Spades, who were a popular band from Peterborough, and he's a recording engineer, and he recorded our third last record. What the hell is that record called? I can't remember, what is it called now. The name is escaping me. But anyway, our third last record, the one before A Thousand Arms, he recorded that. But he's also an excellent musician, so he was in Greg's solo band. So Greg was just cranking out all these tunes and writing all these songs. So he recorded his solo record, and then he had a bunch of songs for the new Blue Rodeo record. And Jim had a bunch of songs, and they agreed we got to do a record. But because of COVID, we had to record separately, because Greg being diabetic, was reluctant to leave his home. He didn't want to come into the city to record. Just kind of wanted to stay local. And so at no point did the whole band get together to work out these songs, it was all kind of done individually. So, they each sent, so Greg recorded a bunch of demos of the songs with his Peterborough folks, and then sent those demos to everybody else in Blue Rodeo and was like, these are how the tunes go. So those songs are already partly recorded. Jim Boskill had already recorded his parts. Greg had already recorded his vocals. And there were drum and bass parts that were that were kind of his guidelines that were going to be re-recorded by Basil and I. And then Jim did demos of his own at Blue Rodeo Studio in Toronto, the Woodshed. Greg had recorded all his stuff. Jim Boskill has a studio in Coburg called Ganaraska Recording Company, and that's where Greg had demoed his stuff. And Jim demoed his stuff at Blue Rodeo's Woodshed studio. So we all got sent demos of the stuff and how it's supposed to go. And then we just all went in. I went in one day at the Woodshed and I recorded Jim's 5 songs. And then I went one day to Ganaraska Recording Company in Coburg and I did Greg's 7 songs. And that was it. That was like, I did all my parts in 2 days, and that's what everybody did. And because of that, it was the lowest stress, least conflicted album that Blue Rodeo has made since 5 Days in July, which was really good because with us, like I've been in the band 30 years. The band was around 7 years before that. Jim and Greg have been, together like for 50 years or something. There's a lot of water under the bridge, and there was a thing happening when we get together and record where there'd be like friction, there'd be like past resentments would surface, and there was none of that with this record. And so it was actually a beautiful thing. It was actually, in hindsight, it was like an ideal way for us to record because we could make a record together that without any conflict or resentment, and we could sort of put all that stuff behind us. And as it turned out, the end result, like Greg happened to also have the strongest batch of songs he's had in years, and Jim also had a very good batch of songs. Jim's a remarkably consistent songwriter, and so I'm really happy with the record. I think it's a really strong record. I think it flows together really well. The songs are really fun to play live, and so it all worked out. It all worked out really well, and which was really nice at this point in our career because it's not easy to stick around as long as we have and make something that still feels vital.
So you just talked a lot about the recording process. We have a fan question from a mother-daughter duo. This is Janet and Taylor Evans. Their question is, what is your favorite part of the recording process?
Well, I would say actually my favorite part of the recording process is usually, in the case of Blue Rodeo, the way we normally record is we get together and we hear a song for the first time and we learn it together and then we arrange it together. And usually the songwriter will have specific things that he wants. Like I hear this on the drums. Sometimes it's like, do what you feel. And sometimes it's like, usually Jim is more like a do what you feel guy. And Greg is more like, I have someone with very specific ideas of how he wants to approach it. Like he'll even sing you drum fills he wants to hear, like say the drum parts on Greg's songs on the new record. you're listening to Greg's ideas there as translated by me, and actually they were first translated by another drummer from Peterborough, Ian McEwen, who actually played bass and drums on the demos. And that's him translating Greg's ideas. And then I'm translating what Ian did.
You're the interpreter.
So with Greg, you're often interpreting Greg's ideas. But with Jim, he has a little more free reign. But I enjoy that process a lot. The process of sort of arranging the songs together. That's usually my favorite thing. But in the case of this record, that wasn't part of it. It was more about just going in there and executing. And I love actually just recording. I love it when you're rolling and you got to make it happen. I love that too. I love recording. So I guess my favorite part is, I kind of love the whole process, but I have to say, once it's done, I don't want to hear it. And that's the part. I love the whole thing, except don't ask me to listen to it afterwards. Don't ask me what I think about, if I'm really happy with it. Like, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it. When I've left the studio and I know I've done the best I can, I'm happy with it. When I hear it later, I'm always going to hear something I wish I did differently, or I wish somebody else did differently. Oh, why did they do that? And that's the part I don't like. After that, it's out in the world, and I don't really want to revisit it unless I have to.
That's the curse of being a perfectionist, is always hearing what could be done,
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. I don't particularly enjoy listening to myself afterwards. Unless it's, usually if I can listen to it many years later, like I'm good like 10 years later, because then it's so far down the road that there's nothing I can do about it. And then I can listen to it and go, oh, that was actually pretty good. But it usually takes about 10 years to get there.
That's a long process. There are songs on the new album. Some are rock, some are pop, some are folk, some are country. Is this the widest array of musical genres and influences, the widest musical spectrum on a Blue Rodeo album? Or is it just me? Am I hearing things?
I think I kind of feel like you could say that about every Blue Rodeo record, with maybe the possible exception of 5 Days, which is more specifically kind of like folk, acoustic country roots music. But I'd say, if you listen to Lost Together, there's some pretty heavy rock songs on there. There's some pop songs. There's some ballads. There's some country flavored tunes. So I'd say that kind of diversity is characteristic of the band, So I don't know if it's I would say if you were going to say what is your most diverse album musically, I would actually choose Tremolo from 1977, because there's songs on there, like there's one song, Graveyard, that's a straight up punk rock song. I mean, I even played lead guitar on that song. I'm not a very good lead guitar player, but it worked out. It worked out for that song because, like I say, it's like a punk rock song, And then also on that song are long, vibey instrumentals with a lot of improvisation, and then there's straight up country rock songs, and there's ballads, So I would actually choose Tremolo, or or maybe All the Things We Left Behind, also, which is the double album we put out. I think that came out 2004, around there, and that's also a very diverse album musically. That's got jazzy elements in it, and so I think that has always been a big part of the band's identity, that kind of musical diversity, and I just think that this record is an extension of that.
So there's a Facebook fan group on it's called Blue Rodeo Crazies. There's like 4,400 people in there. And
is there that many?
There's 4,400, and that's one of a few groups. So I infiltrated, and I got, this is a comment, not a question. So this is from Shelly Kratke from that group. She says, "Many a Mile is incredible. We are loving this tour, even with the prices of gas," with a crying, joking face. So amazing to see them all so happy. So yes, a nice comment.
Yeah, well, this tour has been great. And I'd say the band is actually, I feel like I've thought this before, I feel the band is definitely it's the strongest band I've been in since I joined the band. When the first lineup of the band when I joined, which was James Gregg, Kim Deschamps on pedal steel, Basil, Jim, Greg, and myself. That six-piece was a very, very strong band initially, and musically. That was the band that recorded 5 days. And especially during that period of 5 days and playing that music, we were a very, very strong band. But then tensions started to happen and things, and that band kind of lost some of its strength musically. Like, I think some of the personal conflicts that were in that band actually affected us musically. And then, the band has always been strong musically, but as members have come and gone, we've had our ups and downs. But presently, we're a 7-piece. So we have Michael Boguski on keyboards, who's a tremendous keyboard player with a he can jazz, classical, and rock background. So and then we have Colin Cripps on guitar. We brought him in when Greg's hearing what became problematic enough that he no longer wanted to play electric guitar. He just wanted to switch entirely to acoustic, and so we brought Colin Cripps in as another lead electric guitar player. And so Colin has played with Colin used to be in Crash Vegas, and he was in Junk House with Tom Wilson, and he's a long-standing member of Jim Cuddy's solo band. He's been in the Jim Cuddy band since 1997. And so, he's a super strong guitar player. And of course we have Jim Gregg and Basil. And then we brought in Jim Boskill when Bob Egan left our band. Bob Egan was our pedal steel player for 17 years and also multi-instrumentalist. And he played mandolin and an acoustic guitar, wonderful musician. But he sort of decided he wanted to move on from a career to music he had a kid when he was 60 and kind of wanted to move into another career. That sort of kept him closer to home. And so we brought in Jim Boskill, and Jim is this incredible musical genius who can play everything, but he is particularly masterful at anything with strings on it. And when he first joined us, because we mostly had Colin playing electric, he kind of focused on pedal steel and violin and mandolin. But after the recording of Many a Mile, he played a lot of guitar in Many a Mile because he was kind of, with Greg. So now we have Jim on guitar as well, and Jim is a phenomenal guitar player. So we're doing shows where we have Colin and Jim dueling on guitars, and it's just so ripping. It's just it's so good. And so we have 3 tremendous soloists in the band now. We have Boguski, we have Colin, and we have Jimmy, and as well as the 4 sort of core members that have been there for 30 years, myself, Basil, Basil, Jim and Greg been there since the beginning, but myself 30 years. And then, so I feel like this is the strongest version of the band that I have ever been in. We are bulletproof, it's going to be a good show. We just can't lose, so yeah, I agree. Yeah. Many Mile tours. We're killing it out there. It feels great. It's an exciting time for the band, which is a beautiful thing to say after being in it for 30 years,
And I'm excited to see that you guys just announced you have another Ottawa date. So I have it here. So I think it's June 26th at the TD, I think, what is it? The TD Tulip Festival, maybe? Give me a second. Where is that? Give me 2 seconds. Under the tour, there it is. So yeah, so you're playing on June 26th at the TD Ottawa Jazz Festival. So
Jazz Festival. Yeah. Tulips will be done by June 26th.
That's a good point. So as we wrap up, I still have a few fan questions, and I still have a few kind words sent in. So I'd be breaking hearts if I didn't get to these, because they were kind enough to send them in. So are you okay if I rapid fire through a few of these for you?
Of course.
Okay, amazing. So we have a question from Twitter. This comes from Debbie Jones. and she has the greatest Twitter handle of all time. So her Twitter handle is actually just Love Blue Rodeo. That's it, at Love Blue Rodeo. That's amazing. That's a real fan. That everything she posts attached to it is Love Blue Rodeo. So just so you know that. Right. So Debbie says, I have seen Blue Rodeo around 11 times, hence my Twitter handle. Last time was December 2021 in Kitchener. I've always been drawn to their voices and lyrics, like those sunsets that leave you feeling so stoned, as an example. What was your most memorable video shoot and why? And you have a couple cool videos from the new album as well.
Most memorable video shoot. Video shoots are never, they're always just something like, oh my God, can we just get through this? The most memorable one, I don't know, the Lost Together one was memorable because it was my first video shoot with the band. And it was when we had bigger budgets, so it was more of a big deal. You know, I remember being in Elora, in the Elora Gorge, shooting down there for sort of these outdoor scenes where we had this fake moon above us. And then some of that was also shot in a barn at Greg's place, which has since collapsed. But that was a I guess, you know, that's the first one that comes to mind as being a memorable video shoot. You know, I also remember shooting the video for Hasn't Hit Me Yet at Greg's place. That was kind of memorable. I remember liking that video at the time, thinking it was a good video. And, you know, I remember our most recent video shoot, because it was recent, which was, I think, for Owe It To Myself. Yeah, because the When You Were Wild is an animated video, so I was involved in that. So yeah, there's a few that come to mind.
So one of my last guests on the podcast was super producer David Bottrell. I mean, he's worked with Tool and Muse and Peter Gabriel. So he says, I worked with Glenn on the Ensign Broderick project and have seen him play live with Blue Rodeo many times. Solid as the proverbial rock and extremely creative. He drives the engine of every project he works on. I look forward to working again with him in the future. So David Bottrell.
Oh, that'd be nice. Yeah, I'd like to work with him again. He was great. Dave was great. I think, yeah, when you asked me for a quote about him, he is a fastidious producer, and I was very impressed with his methods. Very thorough and gratifying to work with because of that. Easy to work with because, you know, he could tell you exactly what he wanted and where.
Now that you say that, I remember having to say the word fastidious and having to practice it and struggling. So now I remember that I blame you for that word.
I'm just expanding your vocabulary.
That's a great word, though. So another question sent in from Facebook from Jackie Andre. She says, dedicated fans know the story behind the recording of Many a Mile and how everyone was given a lot more leeway and time to lay down their parts. Going forward, would Glenn prefer recording this way?
No, and I actually wasn't given a lot more leeway. So it's funny she said that. It was quite the opposite. I did not have more time or leeway. I had to get it done quickly, and you know, and I was also, especially in the case of Greg's songs, I was playing to a template that he had already created. You know, and basically said, "I want you to do this." So it was actually less leeway than usual, but that was fine because it allowed me to be very efficient. Because the thing is that often with Greg, because he is so like, I want you to do this, and I want you to play this fill. Often that creates kind of friction because there's a part of you that goes, well, I want to do my thing, you know, like, and it eliminated all of that. It eliminated all the discussion of like, well, you know, I could do this, you know, instead of your idea. Sure, you know, you got this idea, but I've got this idea. It eliminated all that, and it made it a lot more efficient. So I would say that's good, but it's not necessarily how I would prefer to continue. I like being more collaborative. I would say, given my druthers, I would be more collaborative than we were on this record, but not necessarily a lot more because I do appreciate, like, Greg does have very specific ideas, and they're they're usually really good ideas, you know, like he knows what he wants. He's a very musical guy, and he does tend to think of all the instruments. He doesn't just sort of go like, I wrote this song on acoustic, what do you guys think, what should we do? Like, he's like, I want the organ to do this, I hear the bass line doing this, you know, I hear this. Like, he's always got the whole picture painted in his head. So it is, in some ways, it was a good way to work with him. Also, because he was working with people when he was initially translating those ideas, it was with people who he had no history with, you know. So there was kind of no friction. So we bypassed all that. So there are benefits to it, but I would prefer to be more collaborative. But I think we can take lessons that we learned from this approach and put that into our collaborations to make them more harmonious. And I hope that that's how we proceed in the future.
We have some kind words sent in from J.W. Jones, Juno-nominated guitarist and singer-songwriter. He says, no one plays a train groove like Glenn. Nothing is more important in a band than the backbeat being in the pocket, which is where he takes up residence and couldn't be evicted even if he tried. J.W. Jones.
Oh, that's nice of him. Yeah, it's funny, train grooves, that he mentions train grooves, because they're a big part of what I do, or just about any Canadian drummer. At some point, you're going to be asked to do train grooves. And I remember when we got the Governor General's Award for the Performing Arts, I remember thinking, like, I love Canada because it's probably the only country in the world where they'll give you a medal for playing train grooves for 20 years. There's my medal in the middle there. 20 years of train grooves, 30 years now. Got to know your train grooves.
We have a question sent in. This is the last question. This is from a drummer and a singer-songwriter named Chris Zimmerman. Have you ever dealt with playing-related injuries? And if so, how did you deal with it?
The only time I dealt with playing-related injuries was recently, and it wasn't really an injury, but one of the bands I play with now is a band called Ian Blurton's Future Now, and like I previously mentioned, Change of Heart, a band I was playing with when I joined Rodeo, and who I had to leave because I joined Rodeo. But I've continued my relationship with Ian, and he has a band now called Ian Blurton's Future Now, which is essentially a metal band or a hard rock band. And so I've been playing in that band, and I'm hitting really hard in that band, and it's a very loud band. I was hitting really hard, and I was finding that my hands were kind of getting stiff, and I was sort of losing my grip on my sticks and stuff like that. So I went and took a lesson with this guy named Adam Hay, who's a very technically minded and technically accomplished drummer, and who has worked a lot on things like grip and things like that. Because, you know, these things are all, you know, I did take drum lessons, but I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about like my grip and things like that. And so, you know, he gave me some tips on how to adjust my grip so that I wasn't creating so much tension. And, you know, I like I say, I hadn't injured myself, but I felt like I was going to if I continued playing like I was. So, and I've always managed to avoid injury, because whenever I felt like injury always comes from tension. It always comes from being tense in your playing. And whenever I felt like I'm you know, stiffening in my joints or anything like that, I've always adjusted what I'm doing to stop it. So, and in this case, that I had to be a little more drastic and sort of get some instruction, because I was doing something. Also, I'm older, you know, like when I was in my 20s, I could hit the drums as hard as I physically could and have no repercussions at all from it. But now I'm in my late 50s, and you know, if I spend an hour and a half like hitting drums as hard as I can, I feel it. And so I have to be able to do it in a way that there's no tension in my body. So I have managed to avoid injury by just being mindful about that.
You mentioned before that you have 4 kids. Do they think their dad is a rock star, or are you just some schmuck in the house?
They think I'm a schmuck in the house. And though occasionally, like, you know, my daughter now will say, my dad's pretty cool, because she's 23. Like, but, you know, when you're like 13, nobody thinks their dad's cool when they're 13. They just think they're a schmuck in the house. But you know, they like, they like the perks of what I do. They love being backstage at shows. They like seeing the shows. What they really like is like access to endless amounts of like snacks. that's what makes me coolest, is my access to snacks and beverages that I can bring home after shows, or that they can get to backstage after shows.
These are from the riders for the Blue Rodeo shows?
Yeah, this is from riders. So yeah, they don't see me as, I mean, I don't see myself as a rock star. I mean, I see myself as a professional musician who associates with some well-known individuals like Jim and Greg, you know, like I don't get recognized on the street. Jim gets recognized on the street, you know, so like, I'm associated with people who are famous, and I'm not a rock star. I'm just a working musician, and because I see myself as that, they see me as that, but they see me as a working musician who has access to some cool snacks.
The final comment sent in here is from someone that actually knows your kids. So this is from platinum selling, Juno Award winning singer songwriter Holly McNarland. So she says,
"Oh yeah, Holly, yeah.
Glenn is a very kind man. Our kids went to school together about 11 years ago. Glenn was always warm and welcoming. We were new to the school and community. Watching him live is bloody amazing too. Also, he doesn't age. Why the fuck doesn't he age?" That's Holly McNarland.
Oh, that's cute. I do age. I've aged, but I've had some genetic good fortune. So like, I'm not bald or graying yet. But it'll happen, you know. But yeah, oh, and you know, there's one, I got to say, there's one other question that someone sent me from when I shared your post, people asking questions. You said, "How long have you been drumming?" And I've been drumming for 48 years. If you know, that's when I got my first drum set when I was 10, and I'm 58 now. So that's how long. Yeah.
I have two final questions for you. Can you handle the final two? These are
sure.
These are a little deeper. So when you look back on your life and career, what are you most proud of and most grateful for?
I'm most proud of the fact that I chose my own path and it worked out. And it was not an advisable, sensible path, but it was the path I had to go on. And it was a path that could have easily ended in disaster or poverty, but it was a path but I knew that, and I didn't feel I had a choice. But I believed that if I persisted, it would work out, and that turned out to be true. And so that is something that I believe very strongly in, is persistence. And so if I'm proud of any one thing, is that I have persisted, that I chose my own path, and I persisted, and it paid off. And I think that that's an important thing, if in any endeavor, is whatever if you're fortunate enough to find something that you love, which I know isn't easy. I see all kinds of people around me trying to figure out what to do with their lives, and I was really fortunate that from the age of 8, I knew what I wanted to do. And then from there, and then I also had like an almost blind, unjustified self-belief, and which helps, but and that I persisted, and that's the thing that I'm proudest of, and that is the thing that I would advise anybody. Once you are on a path, you must persist, and you must believe, and you just work hard and don't diverge from that path, and it will pay off. And you'll probably maybe have to make sacrifices, and it won't be easy, and there may be some real low points, but if you persist, and if you are honest with yourself and continue to try to make yourself better at what you do, and then you'll prevail. And I'm proud that I've managed to do that.